Hello everyone, today we will be discussing Dallas TRHT's focus on racial equity as well as analyzing the organization's actions and efficacy. So today we will be covering 5 main topics which include the organization's history, goals, actions, effects, and future plans.
The organization that we chose to research is called the Dallas Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation. The Dallas TRHT is a locally and nationally established organization which plans to bring about change in regards to racial inequity and discuss the historic and contemporary effects of racism.
Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation was launched with the purpose of creating a process where communities can focus and be educated more on uprooting and eliminating the false ideology of a hierarchy of human value in order to effectively transform the place we live, learn, work, and play. There are multiple TRHT organizations all over America, but Dallas TRHT was launched in 2016 with the help of the W.K. Kellogg Foundation. The other 14 communities are located in Alaska, Louisiana, New York, Illinois, California, Virginia, Alabama, Minnesota, and Michigan.
So moving on to the goals, Dallas TRHT currently has 3 goals set into place. For the first goal, the DRHT emphasizes the importance of hearing personal narratives and origin stories. This is really important because historical narratives are as important as data and should be acknowledged when doing work in communities of color, creating policy, and expanding perspectives. DRHT's second goal, which is to share a more expansive community racial history, is essential to understanding the background behind racially motivated policy and attitudes. Finally, the third goal's purpose is to share the results of community visioning sessions, which allow the organization to better help the community connect and listen to each other's experiences. These goals are meaningful in expanding the perspective and understanding of racial inequity, as well as its relation to policy, and push citizens to delve deeper into the historical background of the city of Dallas.
The Dallas TRHT takes action to address the issue of racial inequity in DFW through various initiatives. One such initiative is the Racial Equity Now cohort. This cohort works with organizations to provide racial equity training, review of their policies, and case study presentations to help them address racial inequity within their organization. Another initiative started by Dallas TRHT is the Black Women in Nonprofit Leadership cohort, which allows Black women to receive training and support for issues related to mental health and being a Black woman in the nonprofit sector. Finally, Transformation Tuesday is an online initiative taken by Dallas TRHT to educate the public on how race and racism affects various aspects of daily life and what we as a community can do about it through informative and engaging videos. In conclusion, the Dallas TRHT provides information and training on racial inequity through these 3 initiatives.
The effects of Racial Equity Now cohort include broadening people's understanding of racism and racial justice in society through narrative change and relationship building. The cohort will also provide leadership development on the implementation of racial equity policies and practices within their organization and their communities by providing racial equity training, understanding, and policy implementation. Another effect of cohort is that they will form a draft of a racial equity policy, a racial equity theory of change, and strategic plan with a racial equity lens, which will actively contribute changes to the community, such as expanding people's views on historical attitudes, policies, and practices. The cohort event will also result in receiving a racial equity grant, which will be used to fund the racial equity strategy plans.
Dallas TRHT uses social media as a tool to bring awareness and educate the community about historical and current racial injustices that have occurred, as well as inform the public about events and meetings they or other organizations are holding. They actively use social media platforms such as Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube.
Dallas TRHT accomplishments. Dallas Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation recently declared that racism is a public health crisis, and they actively provided rest days within their organization without asking employees to use their PTO and vacation time. While the Dallas TRHT encourages other organizations and businesses to join them in providing rest days, they do not actively implement a strategy. Although they had good intentions in attempting to provide rest days, this effort would have been more effective and widespread if Dallas TRHT had actively reached out to organizations, rally, or create any substantial change other than simply encouraging others to follow their lead. Additionally, the recorded sessions of Transformation Tuesday effectively provided individuals with details about racism, environmental justice, fashion and faith, and many more topics in order to emphasize the ways racism in the community can impact every aspect of our daily lives and what actions the community can do to transform it. Lastly, the Dallas Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation created an award-winning documentary which allowed community members to learn about the importance of narratives from marginalized communities, honesty, and changing racist narratives from an all-women of color panel.
The Dallas TRHT has a variety of future plans that they often promote on their social media. Those include the Racial Equity Now cohorts, the workshops, and scholarships. The Dallas TRHT continues to work on achieving their aforementioned goals, which have been successful so far. The organization has begun introducing new plans to further their impact and spread the knowledge of truth, racial healing, and inequity. One of the plans the Dallas TRHT has is to hold workshops throughout the next year. These workshops involve one-on-one racial coaching for participants. The one-on-one coaching is a great opportunity for organizations to become thoroughly educated on racial equity policies and other issues. However, this is not the most effective method of education because the application is very competitive, and then it becomes limited to only the most influential organizations. So this means that even though these workshops and cohorts can be very beneficial in educating people, it does not have the capacity to make large-scale changes. The Dallas TRHT also sponsors individuals to attend a conference hosted by Facing Race. This is the largest race conference in the U.S., and it works towards achieving racial justice and discussing strategies.
In order to understand why the Dallas TRHT puts so much emphasis onto policy and its effects on minorities, it is essential to delve deeper into history and analyze key legislation which has directly affected communities of color. Governmental policy plays an integral role in the historic reinforcing of racial hierarchy through housing discrimination, voter suppression, and other policies. To start off, a key policy which reinforced the racial hierarchy in America was the National Housing Act of 1934. This policy aimed to encourage improvement in housing standards and conditions, to provide a system of mutual mortgage insurance. However, this act actually led to the HOLC labeling predominantly black neighborhoods as redlined, to categorize areas as high and low risk when giving loans. This led to those communities facing active disadvantage in lower quality schooling, housing, and quality of life. While the Housing Act prohibits housing discrimination on the basis of race, gender, and religion, this was often overlooked. While white Americans frequently moved to new white-only suburbs with the help of the National Housing Act, black Americans were denied the same opportunity. This, in turn, locked black Americans into cyclical poverty and reinforced the racial hierarchy. Additionally, despite Congress passing legislation that protects people of color's suffrage rights, communities continue to face obstacles. Discriminatory legislation such as the Felon Disenfranchisement Law specifically targets black citizens. In doing so, the government continues to silence hundreds of thousands of black votes, which in turn affects their ability to vote for like-minded representatives, thus continuing the cycle of keeping the same politicians in power. Without representatives who fight for issues important to the black community, change will likely stagnate and remnants of racial hierarchy will remain. Finally, the Dallas TRHT emphasizes the importance of analyzing the effects of historic and current policy in the black community, and this can be seen through legislation from as recent as 2020 to decades ago. It continues to hold a significant impact in forming and preserving the racial hierarchy.
Although Dallas TRHT has broadened people's understanding of racial justice through their social media outreach and workshops, we think it is unlikely to lead to immediate change in legislation and policy in DFW. The organization could work to expand their programs to reach larger audiences to create widespread change in the city of Dallas, rather than a small group setting. All in all, Dallas Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation does a good job of spreading awareness on racial inequity, but could improve in enacting real change through legislative policies, through rallying, petitions, or other courses of action. The Dallas TRHT is an important organization making a real impact in DFW by addressing racial inequity. So if this topic interests you, you should definitely check out this organization. That concludes our presentation on Dallas Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation. Thank you for your time.